Hello everyone and welcome back to another Black Desert video. So, with the recent change to all the AP scaling, the formulas, and the grind spot monster damage changes, I spent a little bit of time adjusting some of my crystal presets, and basically a lot of stuff has changed. Some of them stayed the same. Grind spot numbers have been adjusted, and I wanted to talk about every crystal setup that I have. Now, this is like version 13, so you can see what I've used last time and what has changed. But overall, I want to talk about it for everything. So PvE, PvP, life skills, just grinding for XP. So this is kind of like an all-in-one. And before I start, I want to show you something. This is not really new news, but it's kind of like if you look at this by default, this is your gear, right? Oh, I should probably put that on. And the way you would look at it is you see this number over here. These are your stats. This is the grind spot. Like the green number means you have enough AP to be there. And then the like entry level is what this number is. And effective is how much you should have. So you can check your numbers over here, also over here, and also over here if you adjust it. So yeah, that's basically how you can calculate grind spots and what you do. So with that said, let me pop this. All right. Let's look at all the crystals that I have. Now, I understand not everyone has all the presets, like the 15 sets you have. I think realistically you only need about like 3 or 4, which is what they give you by default. So like 1 for PvE, 1 for PvP, maybe 1 for life skilling, and then 1 extra for whatever you're doing. But anyway, this is what I have. So this is the original one. Nothing changed as of last time. I still think this is a good one for people who don't meet the AP recommendeds for every grind spot. So if you're not meeting the efficient level or you're barely meeting it, this is the most damage output, and I think it's overall pretty solid. So I don't think this one is bad at all. It's just if you're way overcapped, you would use something else. So yeah, this is the default go-to. I think this would be good for most people for PvE situations, just because not everyone is, you know, where I'm at in the game for like almost max gear. So yeah, I think by default this is still the best one, most damage output. You guys can see all this as well, and we'll talk about beginner options a little bit later, but for now, this one is knockback and knockdown. So if you're in various PvE spots, this is for PvE. I wanted to make that clear. And for PvP, the resistance numbers are all like wonky and still need more testing. And they removed like grab, resists, and everything, so that's different. But if you are PvEing, there are still spots where I think these are important. So like depending on which grind spot you're at, we'll be using double knockbacks over here, so you don't get knocked back. More is better, that's the idea of it. But aside from that, go to PvE damage, and you take out some of that for resistances. Knockdown is the same, except we have knockdown resistance. And I think this one is actually probably the most important, because knockdown resist is actually big in a lot of grind spots, and with full buff, you can actually hit 100%. And it works differently for PvE, where you can actually cap out at 100% resist, but for PvP, it does not work like that. So either way, double adamantines for knockdown. And the next one, these are all the same, by the way, like more or less, but this one has a extra stalwart fortitude for more knockdown res. And then this one is basically stun stiffness with double giants, I believe. So ultimately, do you need these? Not really. If you don't have all the presets, you basically take this one and then take out like the 2 of your weakest crystals and replace it with knockback or knockdown. I think realistically knockdown is the most important, and then it's more specific towards whichever grind spot. All right, so when in doubt, use this one. If you're not overcapped, we'll talk about the overcapped stuff in a bit, and let's go into PvP. PvP, if you want full damage output, this is what I would use. They changed it from human damage to damage against adventurers, which is what you see in the tooltip. The extra damage against humans is like, you know, the PvE, and then adventurers is players, just to make that clear. So yeah, this is what I have. The ideal setup is you just want as much AP and as much AP against adventurers, and then, you know, buffs to it. So this is kind of glass cannon. You do the most damage, but defensives are not there. So glass cannon setup, that's what you use. Now this is my PvP defensive setup, where you're not necessarily doing a lot of damage, but you're also not dying. So this also works with, ideally you're going to be stacking more DR and like the artifacts with the DR setup and more defensive stuff. And what I wanted to do with this setup was I wanted a mix of DR, but I still wanted to be able to do a little bit of damage, because you know there's people in like RBF or, you know, just build full defensive and do no damage. My goal was to do a little bit of a mix, and then we also have, you know, other ones with more defenses. But either way, this is the hybrid one where it's mostly defensive but with a little bit of damage. So 4 Hooms and the defensives with the purple crystal, and then all of this is more damage reduction. So this is what you're stacking: damage reduction, more health, and, you know, a little bit of damage. But ultimately this is the tankier setup, whereas this one is the glass cannon. So this is the one that I changed a little bit. So this one is my Arsha build. Like, so you're PvXing. What that means is you are doing a mix of PvE and PvP. So let's say you're on Arsha, you're just grinding, and then people come in, and then you have to do, like, you do PvP. Obviously that's pretty expected, very standard. So I have a little bit of a mix of damage plus defensives, because if you're just using your PvE and then someone comes in with full PvP setups, you're just going to lose. It is what it is, unless you're straight out gearing them. But assuming more or less equal gear, this is what I would use. So depending on where you're grinding, you could swap out Hooms for Macalods, because like if you don't meet your AP caps or your monster zone damage, you could probably switch that out. But for me, I have more gear, so I can trade off a little bit of Hooms. We use the red crystal over here. I think this one is just the jack of all trades. This one is just overall good for both PvP and PvE. So what you would be using in other ones is basically this one. This one's the PvE, and this one is PvP. And what I wanted was a little bit of monster damage, but also survivability and also damage against players as well. So this is kind of like the hybrid thing that I would do for like 1v1s or like small scale. Let's say your guild is in a GVG. This one's still kind of experimental. You can tweak it to however you want to. So what I would do is, if let's say you're a class and you need more accuracy, what you could do is swap out like these red crystals and then put like an accuracy in here if you wanted to. So like you could do that, or you could swap out more like extra damage and then put like a Elcar crystal if you wanted to. So if you need more accuracy, this is what you can do. Trade off that one. Ultimately, this is more personal preference than anything, but this is my setup that I used. And I actually think this one is really tweakable, so like depends on what you need. So this one is my accuracy setup. This is more for PvP exclusive. So let's say RBF, Node Wars, you know, sieges where you're kind of like beyond overcapped and you just want more accuracy. Like you're trading a little bit of damage for more being able to hit people. But this is also better for uncapped. So like, let's say you're grinding, once again, Arsha, but you want to just trade off damage for being able to hit them. Depends on the class, like who you're fighting against. This is accuracy. So we have double Vipers over here with double Elcars over here. So that we're stacking about 200 accuracy. Ideally, you would want the Jinn accuracy crystals. They give more, but you know, that's literally lower on my priority list. I have gear and stuff to make right now. So if you have bonds, I think they're fine. Let's see, do I have double bonds actually? Or do I only have one? Yeah, I only have one for now. But either way, I think what people said is up to 3 accuracy is probably the limit if you're fighting full evasion. Otherwise, I think after the change, more people are kind of toning down the evasion, especially like the people I've been talking to are beyond geared and like have more gear than I do. And like evasion is like right now kind of getting worse, but it's not bad. So I think 2 or 3 is probably the limit. I think 2 is just overall the best, where you don't lose too much damage. And I think this one's overall good. So what we do, you could trade off Mysterious Darkness for also Corrupted Crystals if you wanted more crit. But this one also has a downside of minus damage reduction. So I decided I think I could do back attacks, especially if your class does well with it. So PvP, damage against adventurers, but mostly stacked accuracy, and you're still being able to do a little bit of damage. And I chose double adamantines because in PvP, knockdown is probably the strongest CC you can do on someone. So that's why I have this one stacked. But if you are a class with permanent super armor, we're talking sages, hashes, zerkers who are permanently protected, you could probably trade this off for more damage or literally anything else. All right, so this is my evasion PvE setup. Admittedly, I don't really use this that much. Like all the classes that I play are either DR or, I just don't use it. But if you were doing this one, the idea is to stack as much evasion as you can while still being able to do a little bit of damage, but more evasion stacking. So with that said, we have double bonds over here, and we still have some accuracy to be able to do some damage. But the difference between this one and the others is we have double harpias over here, and double frozen bitterness for more evasion and also damage. Again, I don't use this one as much, but if you are an evasion specific one and you're kind of like, this one is more tailored towards higher geared players and people who can spec into evasion without trading off too much damage. Otherwise, what I would do is use this, but then you would have more AP crystals instead. So yeah, that's cool. Now this is my defensive setup, where unlike this one, it's more tanky. If I had more bonds, I would replace them. If I had more gins, obviously those are better. So this one is, if you ever done RBF and you see those like shy classes or the classes that are super tanky, do no damage, that's kind of this one. But what you would do is trade off more AP if you wanted to just be like overall very unkillable. And then the CCs you want knockdown, obviously that one is the most important, so you can actually avoid getting knocked down to move out if you need to. But the one thing that I think is important for this one, if you're a beginner, is as many magic crystals of abundance as you want, because this one doesn't have a limit to how many you can have. So if, like, let's say you're on a budget and you don't have all of these extras, you could actually do that. If you don't need resistances, I think resistances are more valuable, but you could also trade off for an extra 10 DR on here. So basically this is super tanky. Entry level, you can have as many of these abundance crystals as you want. Also, another 1700 health is actually really nice. I think 1700 health is actually worth more than 10 DR in this case. But yeah, this is kind of nice. Also, I've tested this with newer grind spots. Like, remember when Ash Forest or Dekia Ash Forest 2 came out? And like basically this one, if I were to put this on, my health is about 10,000 and like I'm barely even buffed. Like I just have a cron meal and that's it. So 10,000 health. If I don't know if a spot is safe for me or not, this is what I would use, testing it out and see if I could do it. If I'm comfortable in the spot, then you switch into one of your PvE setups or whatnot, and then you can trade that off. So basically you're getting a lot of extra health with this one and then tankier. But if it's also one of those things that it's kind of like a meme build if you want to do it in PvP and just not die. Obviously it works better on some classes than the others, but it's kind of fun actually, just going from glass cannon to straight tank. Okay, so next one, this one is my safe setup. So this one is for PvE, and let's say you're getting to the point where you can grind Dark Seekers or Elvia or Zekia or something like higher up in the scale, and you've never been there before. Compared to this one, You know how this is full glass cannon, full damage? This is probably the safest trade-off you can make while being a little bit tankier and a little bit safer. So if you look at this one, you have 4 Macalods, and what you trade off is the Macalods for, you know, a little bit of extra DR, you know, I guess more damage reduction and resistances, but also because these 2 crystals, the Stalwart Fortitude, they also give extra AP against monsters, so you're not trading off too much damage. This one is kind of like one step below full damage, full glass cannon, but also, you know, being able to try a newer spot that's like kind of dangerous, and still be actively, you know, useful in a way. So I think this is actually a very good one, and it might actually be a little bit better nowadays if you are overcapped. So you could trade off some damage and still be safe at grind spots and still be effective. So yeah, overall, I think this one, like if you look at it, what are the changes? Let's look at it. 50 AP, 73 AP against monsters. This one is 78 and 43. So the difference is so minimal, but you are a little bit tankier, which I think is a very, very good trade-off in my opinion. So yeah, overall, same thing as this one, but -4 Macalods and more defensives. I think this is a very strong one nowadays, and I might actually start using it, but just keep in mind where you're at and how much you're trading off in terms of damage for the spot. But for me, I think this is probably the play over the full damage one, unless I am not capped at a spot, then I'll use that one. All right, so this one is for bosses. So what bosses are is like what I use it for is Blackshrine. So to give you an idea, I do like 8, 9, 10s and hard mode bosses every week, and this is what I use. And okay, so what do I use and why? I use Mysterious Darkness because I can generally get a lot more back attacks in than Corrupted Crystals, and I don't want the downside of taking the extra damage, so I use this one. Chances are, if you're doing Blackshrine bosses at Calamity 10, you're gonna get clapped. If you eat a mechanic, it doesn't really matter how much health you have. I've seen people get like one-shotted and they have more gear than I do. So ultimately it's about learning it, but there are some attacks where you can, you know, feel a little bit safer, and that's about it. So this is what I use for bosses, and mostly for 8, 9, 10 and hard mode setups. But also if you're doing like Calamity 1 to 7, probably not a bad idea to have this one as well. Ultimately, it's kind of like the same thing as this one, but a little bit safer, but for bosses. All right, so that has been PvE and PvP. What we're going to talk about next is Lifeskills. This is straight mastery. Goes up 3 brackets at minimum. And I heard in the future, they're going to start adding crystals for Lifeskills. So you know, like these thingies. They're going to add them for Lifeskills. That's what we'll be replacing it with. I saw a post on Reddit, but I didn't know where that source came from. But I assume it's probably in the works because, like, why not, right? So, like, you know, the Jin, Bond wands, but for, like, Mastery and EXP, I assume that's what it's going to be for these in the future. And then Lifeskill. Now, this one, I think, is more entry level because, you know, pushing your life skills is actually important, right? But getting to a certain point, let's say you want to start doing Imperial Delivery with Guru boxes, but you have to get to Guru first. I think it's okay to start using these ones early on. And some life skills, unironically, are less relevant with Mastery. So, like, farming is less relevant. And then, like, at some point, fishing becomes irrelevant. Like, obviously, Mastery is better, but, like, getting to Guru and stuff, it's probably fine, like, if you're a beginner. So, yeah, processing, you know, feels kind of irrelevant. So if you just want to go for leaderboards and icons, people are using XP. But if you want money, Mastery is always better. So I guess it depends where you're at. And combat. This is literally when I am playing on seasonal characters with no, like, I'm not worried about losing crystals or dying. This one is basically if you are on, what is it? You know, like one of those dummies over there or just AFKing overnight, trying to get as much XP as possible. This is what I would use. So, yeah, those are all my crystals, and hopefully some of these were helpful to you. TLDR, this is what I would use if you are PvEing and you're not at the end game and you need as much damage as possible. So if you're not meeting a cap, this is what you would use. If you are overcapped, this is what you would use. You trade off a little bit of damage for some survivability and safety. PvPers, one of these three, depending on what you're doing. These are more in controlled environments, which is like RBF, Node Wars, Sieges. You probably use one of these two. If you grind Arsha, you have to, you know, be able to swap to whatever. Like obviously in Arsha, you could just like swap to one of them if you wanted to. But if you just want to be lazy and have a all-in-one, it's probably what you should use. Obviously, you tweak this based on how much accuracy you need or don't need, and or you could also, you know, just more damage output if you wanted to. So this one is probably the most flexible. This one works for me, but really just depends on who you're fighting, what you're doing. If you're in controlled capped sieges or not sieges, but like Node Wars, you probably use one of these. And or if you're doing like specific niche build, you could do evasion or defensive. And yeah, really just depends. So ultimately, those are my crystals. Hopefully you can copy them if you wanted to. And before we wrap up, I guess we'll talk about some beginner stuff. I think I forgot about that. All right, so what are some beginner crystals? Valor crystals give more AP, and you know, these are, you know, cheap options compared to some other ones. And nowadays, if you can't get corrupted crystals, you can get mysterious darkness. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're like obtainable. The damage difference is very minimal. If you don't have void crystals, which are from Elvia or Zekia, you could use the non-void versions, which are these thingies, I think. Yeah, these ones. Basically, the difference is you get 2 AP, or 2 AP against monsters with the upgraded ones, so it's not that bad. And then, like, if you need more accuracy but don't want to spend the money on it, you could just go regulars. And yeah, just depending on what you need, these are more like AP against adventurers, human damage, whatever. And stalwart fortitudes are very nice as early game options. Why do I have so many abundance crystals? I don't know. I guess this is what I used before, back in the day, before I got all the like best in slot crystals. So you can basically have as many of these as you want. There's no limit. So it's +5 times as many as you have. And rebellious are always nice. I think you can actually get rebellious pretty easily now. So if you go here and what is it, in the seasonal thingies, you can get them right here. You just combine all of these crystals, like these 3, Voltara, Black Spirit, and Awakened, and you get 1 Voltara, or the rebellious one. So that one's easy to get nowadays. And if you don't have brutal decimations, what you could do is literally just anything else. If you need more survivability, Jin HP crystals, or, you know, affinities, it really doesn't really matter. We could just add basic crit, I guess. So either way, there's a lot of entry level options as well, but these are what I used, and that's about it. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. If you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We got a lot of testing to do for both PvE and PvP, and I'll be doing that and hopefully showing you guys some of the changes I made. So with that said, thanks so much. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.